All right, so today we're going to talk about layering different libraries on top of each other to get a more full sound. Sometimes you need to layer, sometimes you don't need to layer. Depends on the context, but we are going to talk about a little bit of layering here. So we have this short orchestration of Give Me Jesus, and we're going to listen to it real quick just so we have a refresher of what we're working with. Great. So there's actually not that many layers in this. So as I scroll through, you can see the layers. So the greens are the strings, the red orangish stuff is percussion, the purplish pinkish stuff is pitch percussion usually, and then so we've also got our brass here, and then anything bluish just kind of wins. But so instead of having to deal with this and like scrolling through and being like, what do I have in here that I need to double? I'm going to leave everything else running, but I only want to see the stuff that is actually being used. So I have my locators here in the gray. And so cool functionality here in Cubase, show tracks with data between locators. So now suddenly I'm only looking at the stuff that actually has data between the locators. And now it's starting to look way less intimidating of what I actually need to import in order to get another layer in here. Because right now, everything here, I think just about everything is BBC. We used East West Hollywood for the vibraphone and cymbal crash. Other than that, everything is BBC. Chances are I'm not layering the cymbal crash and the vibraphone anyway. I picked those for very specific color reasons, and oftentimes I don't double those because the way those sit in an orchestra is slightly different than how the strings and the winds and stuff sit anyway. They can be a little bit more direct when we are trying to program an orchestra, and I think doubling them isn't going to achieve the effect of making them more full. It's just going to sound like two vibraphones or whatever, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import tracks from project, and I need to find, this is on my other monitor so you can't see it, but essentially I need to find my master template and then import everything that I have here. So actually, let's see. Before I do this, I'm going to make this smaller so I can see everything that I have. Yep. Then I'm going to go to import tracks from project, and I'll actually import them here at the bottom. Import tracks from project. And I'm just going to pull up my master template, which is a much larger template that I didn't start with for this, but it's a much larger template that I built a long time ago that has a ton of stuff in it. And the reason I want to do that is so that everything is already labeled. Everything won't be routed correctly because that template itself has more complicated routing, but things will be labeled and I'll have the articulations and stuff already set up for the most part. So, okay, opening up the master template. It's reading it. It'll take a second here. Perfect. And so you'll see here, this is every track in my master template. It is large, it is extensive. I'm not going to go ahead and add everything in. But I also have things color coordinated in here. So let's just go ahead and start from the bottom with the strings. I know the strings for East-West, I color them slightly differently. So I definitely need bass legatos. So I'm going to go ahead and get my double bass legatos right there, my cello legatos, and then let's see, I need viola pits, violin 2 pits, and violin 1 legato. So viola pits, violin 2 pits, and violin 1 legatos. If you'll notice in my naming scheme here, I have East West Hollywood 1 for the strings there. It's because I actually have Hollywood 2, which is a smaller ensemble, but I don't want the smaller ensemble here. I'm going to use the larger ensemble for this, so I'm using Hollywood 1 to blend with BBC. So basses legatos, cello legato, viola pizz, violin 2 pizz, violin 1 legato. Then I'm going to skip the cymbal crash because I don't really need it. I'm going to skip the marimba and the vibraphone for now. Probably skip the tubular bells as well. Don't really need to stack those, I don't think. If I decide in the end I do, I can always come back and do it. So then I'm going to go up to my brass. So let's see, East West Hollywood brass. So we have tuba legato. So we're going to need, that's trombone. So I did in this template, I did it slightly differently. So I'm actually going to take the entire tuba folder, and I'll take the reason I'm taking the entire folder here is I don't have individual instruments for them. I actually have just the MIDI for them. And actually, realistically, I'm only going to take the instrument and then I'll delete the other articulations. I think that makes more sense. So I'll just take the tuba, take the trombone, and then take the trumpet and the horn. So I used solo trumpet before. That's an interesting question. Do I want to layer and not actually have solo trumpet? I think I'll layer it with 2 more trumpets. That's fine. And then French horn. I believe that is a solo French horn that I have for East West. Probably not exactly what I want here, but we'll see if it works. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, it's fine. We'll just change it up. Remember, the reason for layering is more for timbre things than anything else. I don't have to match it perfectly. And then we have bassoons. So let's see, same thing. East-West I did slightly differently here. So I'm just going to take the bassoon and the clarinets, which I believe this is a solo clarinet, and a solo oboe, and that's multiple flutes. Looks like I have 2 flutes here. I'll go with 2 flutes. Okay, great. And then that seems to be all I use. So I'm going to go ahead and import all of those. Shouldn't actually take that long. They imported disabled, so it imported basically immediately. I'm going to go ahead and enable them. It's going to take a second. Okay, perfect. Now, I'm going to go, there's a lot of different ways to do this. I'm going to expand this. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but I think what I'm going to do is just literally go one by one here. I'm going to put my double bass legato right there for East-West. We can see if I open it up, it's there. Notice that the reverb is not on for that. Okay. And I went ahead and copied and pasted that thing. We're already going to have some changes here just by doing this. It may work immediately. It may not, depending. So just stick through it. So violas, I'm going to put these in my viola folder, and I'm going to copy what the violas are doing. And remember that this is copying modulation information too, which modulation information is actually similar with East, West, and BBC. I used to think it was quite different, and now I think I just thought about CC11 and CC1 incorrectly. You may need to move them around a little bit, depending, because libraries change. But I think these will be okay for these legatos. There wasn't really any modulation I used for the pizzicatos. I don't think we're going to need much there. I think the mid-level that they're at is going to be fine. But again, we can make those adjustments as needed. So we have the viola pizz. Then we have the violin 2 pizz, which is going to go into my violin 2 folder right underneath it. And I'm going to copy what that one's doing into that track. And then East West Hollywood violin 1 legatos. Go ahead and copy that too. I have a feeling that these aren't going to be identical. You'll also notice over here, I have my tracks already set with their pre-delays in my master template. So they imported, or with their negative track delays. So they imported with their negative track delays. So the legatos and stuff should ideally be somewhat close, and then I can just move from there. So then tuba, let's bring this up to the tuba level. Tuba, I'm just gonna literally copy the tuba. And then same thing here. There's gotta be a better way to scroll up. Yeah, that's tenor trombone. This is a solo tenor trombone and it's legato. And actually, because of the way I was MIDI routing it, I need to go ahead and delete everything else basically. So I don't need the sustain. I want the legato slur probably. I think so. I don't want portato, marcato short, or staccatissimo. I want that. And I don't want, I can set that to Omni. I don't want the reverb on. And then for the east-west tuba as well, I probably want legato slur, so I'm going to remove the sustain. Don't want portato, don't want marcato shorts. And then set that to Omni. So that way it's just playing from the instrument track itself, not MIDI being routed to it. Then we're going to go ahead and take the trumpets. Which, remember, this was originally a solo trumpet, so it's going to be slightly different. I believe that was legatos. Yep, legato. So let's go with legato slur max for that. Remove the other stuff. Set that to Omni. And my French horns. There's a little bit of organization stuff you got to do here. In my big template, the one that I just imported from, which I don't really super use anymore, all of this stuff is already organized to basically be right next to each other, so I don't have to do that every time. Let's see, that's legatos. So sustain max. Let's go with the legato slurs. Marcatos long, no. Marcato shorts, no. And staccatissimo, no. And all of those articulations you see, east-west has a million articulations. Those are just the articulations that like I default to for my template. They're the ones I like, that because you could spend all day thinking about articulations, but there's going to be ones that you're going to want to default to that are part of your sound that you write with the most. So yeah, so French horns, that's actually 2 French horns. Okay, that's important to note, but also not that important. Bassoon. So that's a solo bassoon. This one is also a solo bassoon, which makes sense logically, right? But we have to make sure that it's not sounding too much like 2 separate bassoons with tuning issues and stuff like that. And so we're going to have to go through and either lower, blend, mix, whatever we need to do for any of these. This is a solo B-flat clarinet. Yep. And we have our oboe. Again, a lot of legatos were used here. Pretty easy. Legato slur max seems to be the one that I'm defaulting to for all of these articulations. Oh, I think I forgot those other ones to set them to Omni. Yeah. Okay. That way it just plays from there instead of reading a MIDI routing to it. Oh, I need my oboe to paste into oboe. And then a flute is actually staccatissimo flute. So let's get rid of our sustain, legato slur rap, legato rap round robin. I have marcato shorts and I have staccato double tonguing. Let's just start with the staccato double tonguing and see if that works. Otherwise, I'll have to see if there is an even shorter articulation. Now that we've done this, one of the things to note is our routing. So all of this was already routed correctly before, except for our new stuff is not routed correctly. So if we look at our mix window here and we look at our routing, we have the east-west stuff is not routed properly. That's going to my stereo out. That is not going to my groups. So for the flute, the oboe, and the clarinet, I have them all selected. I'm going to route all of them to my high woodwinds. So they're going to the same place as the other ones and receiving the same mix treatment. So they're going to be placed into the same hall and all that sort of stuff. The bassoon is going to have to go to the low woodwinds, which actually, oh, that's the BBC one. the bassoon, this bassoon, is going to have to go to the low woodwinds. And then the French horn, I have that in a high group. Yep. So the French horn for for the French horn and the trumpet for east-west both need to go to high brass. So I have a high brass group right here. And then the tuba and the trombone need to go to the low brass group. We didn't do anything in pitch percussion, and then the violins and violas will go to the high strings group. High strings. And that's changing all of them, by the way. If you're a Cubase user, it's Shift and Alt and click, and it'll change everything on what you're selected. If you're using another audio workstation, I don't know. And then cello and double bass. We'll go to the low. And you can actually see here that those routed extremely weirdly. Routing sometimes when you import from templates without importing the whole template will route extremely weirdly. But yeah. So then actually this is going to, I actually have all of my articulations here going to a cello first. Yep. See, messed that up. So my violas here need to go to my violas group because I have this routed slightly differently. So my BBC articulations and that one need to go to the same place. Same thing with this. Needs to go to violin 2, second violins, and then same thing with this. You see how easy this is with my slightly different color coordination going on here. I can tell immediately what's going on. So this needs to go to first violins, which technically goes to the same spot, the full high strings group, but full group for high strings. But if I end up putting stuff here, it needs to affect this one too. So template routing is what we're doing here. And I don't have that routing set up for anything but the strings right now in this particular project. So the cello needs to go to the cello group, and the basses need to go to the bass group. So theoretically, right now, if I hit play on this, everything is going to be routed correctly and theoretically would play correctly. It's not going to sound perfect, but we're going to get some kind of starting point. So let's go ahead and listen to it now with everything playing. Go ahead and save my project, and let's go for it. This is not playing. Okay, that was pretty subtle, and I think the reason that was pretty subtle is because I think east-west stuff is generally just quieter in how it's routed for its expression and modulation, so we're going to go ahead and fix that. So, but before we do that, I want to select all of the east-west stuff that I just added so that we can hear a clear and obvious difference. Going to mute those, and then I'll unmute them halfway through. Those are all pretty low. So right before them, I'm actually going to just record really quickly a little bit of like mid-level expression to see if I can get them up. Then let's go from there. I'm gonna go ahead and record max volume on all of them as well. So it should read that information. we're starting to get somewhere. What I'm going to do as well, I normally wouldn't do this, but for the sake of this, just right now, normally I would lower everything else. But for the sake of this, let me boost the gain on these east-west ones just a hair. And I actually might undo that because that's like a big no-no typically. I'm actually gonna undo that, I think. Okay. I just don't want to, I mean, I only boosted by like 1 dB, which is not a ton. But you don't want to have the issue with all of this stuff building and peaking and hitting your stereo master bus, causing problems. So here's something that's interesting. I noticed that this flute is not playing. These are not playing together. That's actually a really interesting question because this flute should be playing. So what is it? It's routed correctly too, actually. That's actually very interesting. I thought the problem was on my end. That's actually just a problem with something with the loading of the sample library, actually. Let me reload it real quick. So that's, and also reset that gain. So that's the high woodwinds, flute, high woodwinds, orchestral winds. Oh, actually, I can go 3 flutes too. And let me go staccatissimo doubling. Yeah. Take the reverb off. You said it to epic, but take the reverb off. I think that actually only changes reverb anyway, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so let me make sure that these play. Don't love it on this one. I'm going to turn the mod wheel down a little bit. Yeah, and if I remember correctly, that mod wheel on this is going to shorten the staccato articulation. Something like that. It depends on the articulation. Oh, short's mod speed. The mod speed one would be. This one's not. I think that's actually sounding decent though. Okay. Let's listen to certain sections here. Yeah, so this is ridiculously quiet, right? Yeah, that's ridiculously quiet. So I think we need to go ahead and up our expression on that for all of these strings. Well, these already have some expression, but the pits do not. So we're gonna go ahead and upload or bring that up for the pits and just the pits. So now everything is theoretically up there. Right. So now we're dealing with an issue of these are just like generally quieter. It's just a quieter library. So, I mean, you could theoretically boost it over here if we wanted to. That's the second violins that I'm looking at. You could theoretically boost it right there. Also don't love, you're working on this in real time with me. Also don't love how these in particular are hitting the reverb. But I think when they're blended, it's gonna be okay. That right there is exactly why I actually really like these two combined. The BBC is a very, very warm orchestra, which is what I personally like about it. Everyone has their own preferences in terms of orchestra, but the Hollywood stuff tends to be like thin and bright. And so when you combine them, warm, bright. So you have a little bit of a balance there with those. Hear how that's a little bit brighter once we add in the Hollywood one? Yeah. Let's see how our brass are doing.